Hi, this is college football and stuff. It's week 1 of the season. I couldn't be more excited for the games, and really any games. I'm going to go through the matchups. I got my notes here. I'm going to give you a little bit of information about the teams and then pick a winner for each of the games. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. So we're starting Thursday at 7 on ESPN with Central Arkansas and UAB. So Central Arkansas has already played a game. They played last weekend against Austin Peay, and it was an interesting game. Definitely some sloppy play. Central Arkansas had a pretty nice comeback from what seemed like it was going to be a pretty good win by Austin Peay. They came out to an early touchdown, made a bunch of mistakes that Central Arkansas couldn't seem to capitalize on, and then Central Arkansas just managed to come back. I think that's going to be a good indication of how teams sort of play, especially at the beginning of the season here. I think due to the lack of practices, we're going to see a lot of sloppy play. We're probably going to see defenses playing better than offenses just based on how football goes. I think we're going to see a lot of issues on timings with wide receivers and quarterbacks, and with O-lines playing well, because those are groups that generally need to practice together to do well. UAB is an interesting program. They were completely shut down for a few years, a couple of years back, and they brought their program back and have really just sort of skyrocketed back into being a relevant and good program. They're in a smaller conference, but they've done really well. Their coach has obviously done an amazing job. Super impressed with what they've done over there. They're in Conference USA. They went 9-4 last year, 6-2 in conference. So they're playing Central Arkansas. They're playing at UAB tonight, 7 on Thursday on ESPN. Probably pretty easy to say that UAB is going to win this game. They're a decent Conference USA team. Central Arkansas is an FCS team. Of course, they got a little bit of a boost by being able to play that game last week, so this isn't their first game, it's UAB's first game. But really, I don't think there's much of a chance of UAB losing this. I expect them to win fairly comfortably. Next, later on, also on Thursday at 8 on CBS, have South Alabama and Southern Miss. Now, Southern Miss is a huge favorite in this game as far as the ESPN FPI goes. I think they're like a 70 or 80%. They have them likely of winning this game. So this is the first, I guess, real game of the season between two FBS teams. South Alabama in the Sun Belt, Southern Miss in Conference USA again. So South Alabama, not a great team last year. They had a pretty good team a couple of years ago, played really well, and then just really did not do well, I think, the last 2 seasons or so. The last season, they were 2-10 overall, 1-7 in conference. So not a good season for them. Southern Miss had a pretty decent season. They were 7-5 overall, 5-3 in conference. And again, I'm leaving out bowl games from these. I'm just talking about their regular season win-loss records. I think I'm hoping, I would like to see South Alabama put up a little bit better season than they had last year. Hoping that they can come back a little bit, get back to where they were a few seasons ago. I still think probably Southern Miss is going to win this one. They're a pretty decent team. Conference USA has been a decent conference. They've had a few good teams in there, and they've played pretty strong. So I think I'm going to go with Southern Miss on this one. I don't think it'll be a blowout either way. I would like to see South Alabama show some progress, keep it a close game, but I do think Southern Miss is going to win that one. Moving on to Saturday, we have Marshall and Eastern Kentucky. So this is at Marshall, and again, I don't really think that home and away is going to matter as much this season with reduced crowd capacities, but you may see some stuff with teams not playing as well, just traveling and having not used to traveling a bunch lately, and sort of the extra stress of that, and I'm sure the weirdness that's going to go on in hotels and in the actual process of traveling, just not being comfortable, not having the same amount of support staff around them that they usually have, probably. So we may see a little bit of that. I don't think it's going to matter in this game. Again, Eastern Kentucky, an FCS team. Marshall has been a pretty decent, just throughout most of their history, smaller conference team. They're in the Conference USA again. Went 8-4 last year, 6-2 in the conference. They did pretty well. That game is at 12 o'clock on Saturday morning on ESPN. And I think it's pretty easy to call Marshall winning that game. They didn't even release point spreads for it. So I'm assuming that Marshall is going to win that one pretty easily. Later on, at 12:30 on CBS, you have Middle Tennessee State at Army. So gotta root for the academy teams whenever they're playing. And Middle Tennessee, not a horrible team. A few years ago, I can't remember when, they had a pretty good season. They seemed like they were playing at a fairly high level. Army has been never amazing in the past few years, but has done really well. The type of football they play is really hard for teams to prepare for. They do a great job of, with all of their option running, they really slow the game down. It's hard for another team to make points. They can keep it really close with teams that are better than them, and I think they're going to have a pretty I think they'll have a pretty confident win over Middle Tennessee State. It's not going to be a high-scoring game. Army never scores a ton of points. Just, again, base play. They slow the game down. But I do think that they're going to win this one. It's a 3.5-point spread. I'm not going to try to guess point spreads here, but I think they're going to be able to do maybe a little better than that. Army was 5-8 last season. Middle Tennessee was 4-8, 3-5 in conference. I'm picking Army to win that game. Then 3:30 on ESPN, you have SMU at Texas State. Now SMU, another team that's had high-powered offenses the past few years. They've gone through some coaching changes, and it really hasn't seemed to hurt them that much. They're in the AAC and went 10-2 in overall last year. In the Sun Belt, like South Alabama, they went 3-9 in conference and 2-6. SMU is a 22-point favorite according to the point spread on that game. I think it's easy to say that they should definitely win that. I mean, there's always a chance they won't, but I think it's pretty easy to call SMU winning that game. Texas State, not a horrible team, but definitely not one of the teams you consider being really good. And SMU is one of those smaller conference teams that seems like they can score a ton of points, and they can upset some good teams. And people should be a little worried playing them. So I'm picking SMU to win that game. Then 6:30 on ESPN Extra, which I've never heard of. I assume that's one of the ones you can only watch through the app or if you have a satellite. You have Houston Baptist at North Texas. Now Houston Baptist, an FCS team, probably not going to win this game. North Texas has been sort of up and down. I think they had a nice win over Arkansas a few years ago, so a good win over an SEC team, although not a good SEC team. They're in Conference USA, went 4-8 in conference 4-8 overall last year, 3-5 in conference. They're playing an FCS team. No one did point spreads on this, or at least I didn't see any. I think it's pretty easy to assume here again that North Texas is going to be able to win this game. I don't think it'll necessarily be a blowout game, but I think they win probably pretty comfortably. Probably in a similar fashion, but not as well as I'm assuming that UAB is going to beat Central Arkansas, but I think they're going to win fairly comfortably there. Later on, 7 o'clock on regular old ESPN, have Arkansas State at Memphis. Another nice FBS versus FBS matchup. Arkansas State in the Sun Belt went 7-5 last year, 5-3 in conference. Arkansas State's one of those teams where they've been pretty decent in the past and have been kind of down a couple of years. We'll see if they can sort of get back to where they were before. Memphis has been very good the past few years. 12-1 last year overall, 7-1 in conference in the AAC. Of course, lost their coach and their coaching staff to Florida State. We'll see how that affects them. I also saw some stuff online. They lost, I think, their running back either sat out or was injured recently, so we'll see how that affects them. Memphis, a 19-point favorite on the spread here. I think that they're going to win. I'm fairly confident that they're going to win. We'll see how much losing that coaching staff affects them, how much the limited practice time does, and of course that's going to affect everybody. Arkansas State, a team that I would like to see get back to sort of playing a little bit better ball than they have been the past couple of years. But we'll really see if this is the year that they're able to do it. And I think Memphis has just been such a good team. They, for their conference, have done so well. I think even we'll see how much that was down to the coaching staff. But a lot of times with these kind of teams in these smaller conferences, having a good coach and good seasons gives them just enough of an edge recruiting wise that for at least a couple of years after that staff leaves, they're still a pretty good team. So I'm going to pick Memphis to win that game again. That's 7 on ESPN. So ending the night, this I think is going to be an interesting game. Again, it's on ESPN Extra at 8 o'clock. This is Stephen F. Austin, an FCS team, versus UTEP. So neither of these teams I'm expecting to be very good. UTEP, Conference USA team, went 1-11 overall. So they only won one game all year, 0-8 in conference. That one win, their first game last season against Houston Baptist, a team that's playing North Texas earlier in the night, won 36-34. They beat an FCS team in their opener last year by 2 points. So I think if we see any, and I don't know if you can really call it a big, by 2 points. So I think if we see any, and I don't know if you can really call it a big upset, but anytime an FCS team beats an FBS team, I think it's an upset. This is the game that I would pick for that to happen. I'm not that they're going to lose that game, but Stephen F. Austin could give them a scare. UTEP has struggled. They're not that good of a team. I think if any of these FCS teams have a chance this week of getting themselves an upset, a nice win over an FBS team, it's this Stephen F. Austin UTEP game. So then, ending out the week on Monday, probably the highest profile game of all of these, or almost certainly the highest profile game of all of these. We have BYU at Navy. So again, a service academy, going to be rooting for them. And I really think Navy should win. BYU, complete independent, because no one wants it in their conferences, for a bunch of reasons surrounding the university being probably a little bit too conservative and how they treat their certain segments of the population they have on campus. BYU last year, 7-5, again, not in the conference. Navy, an AAC team, went 10-2 and 7-1 in conference, so a good season. This game is at 7 at night on ESPN on Labor Day. Interesting to note here, Navy, according to ESPN's FPI, is the favorite. But looking up the spread, it's very, very slight. But BYU actually has a 1.5 point spread in their favor. So the spread is favoring BYU. FPI says that Navy should win. I personally am probably never going to be picking BYU for other reasons, but I do genuinely think that Navy has the edge here. I think it's interesting that BYU has that point spread favorite. They're having to go to Navy, which again, you're not going to get the normal boost from having crowds. It's a road game. They're having to travel for it. Navy gets to play at home. Another interesting note about BYU, since they're an independent, they've had to schedule all their own games. They don't have a conference. They are only playing 8 games this year. And Navy is one of the more high-profile teams they're playing. It'll be interesting to see if that sort of gives them a little bit more motivation to come in and try to play harder. It would be a marquee win for them in a season that's otherwise going to be kind of just throwing around playing whoever they can grab. I think it'll be a fun game to watch. I'm really hoping to see Navy get a nice win there. I'm going to be picking Navy to win it. I hope that I don't see BYU win. That's what I got for this video. Those are all of the week 1 games in college football. If you like this video, go ahead and click the like button. If you want to see more of these, I'll be making one each week for the rest of the season, going through all the games, picking winners, talking about the matchups a little bit. So subscribe to this channel if you want to see those. And otherwise, I will see you next time.